It's the blending of that, right? It's like, what can I do today that is academic and artistic? Those things are the things that I love to do because I don't have to do one or the other. I can spit bars that are dope, that are also intelligent, right? If I watch Star Wars and it inspires me, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write this Star Wars verse, but I'm not going to make it cheesy and corny and just make the end word happen to rhyme with, favor so I can rhyme lightsaber, even though I might rhyme lightsaber. Right? It's going to be deeper. It's going to be
Yeah.
doper. It's going to be complex, Let the force be bygone and some master Qui-Gon. Force never dies. We just multiply on. Melt that iron with flag of its Kion. Light sharpens light. Sabers we pipe on. Right on through the dead of night to dawn. Dedicated like a Mennonite when I recite psalms. With a couple lightsabers I place in my tight palms. Devils bounce like Luffy. I'm chewing fruits of the gods, baby. Maybe all my poems I'm quoting made open law. Broken model, Ahsoka Tano, the Padawans. They travel on and sometimes they act sinister. Her third sisters want to be grand inquisitors.
My name's Joel, and I'm a recovering nerd. I've spent the last 25 years bouncing between creative jobs and technical teams. I worked at places like Nickelodeon to NASA, and a few other places that started with different letters. I was one of the first couple hundred people podcasting back in the early aughts until I accidentally became an IT analyst. Thankfully, someone in the government said, "Hey, you're a nerd that talks good," and that spun me off into the world of startups, branding, and marketing for the same sort of researchers and startup founders that I used to hang out with. Today, I help technical people learn how to get noticed, get remembered, and get results. On Nerds That Talk Good, I want to help you do the same. I talk with some of the greatest technical communicators, facilitators, and thinkers that I know who are behind the big brands and the tech talk that just works. You heard a little sample up there at the top, but this was just amazing. You got to check out the homework for today's episode because there's a whole lot of really great things like that you got to go check out. So let's get into it. Peter Plourde, aka Professor Lyrical, is a hip-hop artist, mathematician, and educator who seamlessly blends music with academia. Originally from Lowell, Mass., he holds a BS and an MS in mathematics from UMass Lowell and a doctorate from Northeastern University. Now Associate Professor of Mathematics and Director of Faculty Development at the University of the District of Columbia, he uses hip-hop to engage students in learning, earning national recognition for his innovative teaching methods. But beyond the classroom, he's built a respected career in hip-hop, winning major freestyle battles, including Pitch and Flow at the Kennedy Center. His 2005 album, Infinity, won Album of the Year at the MIC Hip Hop Awards, and his Put 'Em All to Shame project combined a full album and a 200-page book, not a small undertaking. As one half of the rap duo Pro Quo, he continues to push the boundaries of music and education, proving that hip-hop and higher learning don't just mix, they're a powerful combination. Pro, thanks for joining today.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. That sounds better than I am in real life.
Hey, I'm all about making us nerds look and sound good. So I'm really excited about this. I've been trying to branch out with some of the guests that I've been bringing on outside of my sphere. So mathematics, number one, not my thing. I do not math as a theater school dropout at one point. And, male, pale, and stale over here. Yeah, hip hop, rap, casual observer, but definitely not into it all the time. So I'm excited to talk to you about how you're blending those. But let's just start off with the nerd origin story. Which came first? How did you make a transition to get to where you are today?
Yeah, man, it's a great question. I appreciate it, Joel. Yeah, when I was a kid, I was definitely like nerd first. I've been into Star Wars since, I could say it. And that was probably the intro. Liked all of the higher concepts that came up in sci-fi and wanted to make sure that I could understand them better. So, kind of drifted towards math, but the original school system I was in, it probably wasn't that cool. to be into math. It was much more cool to be rapping. And so that's kind of what I led with publicly. And then kind of behind the scenes, you know what I mean? I was filling the gaps in, moved to a different school district where it was a little cooler to be smart. And I was able to, be on the debate teams and the math clubs and all that kind of stuff. And then in college, you kind of create your own identity. So, but the funny thing is when I was in college, I didn't go in as math. I started undergraduate with, they were like, do something with the math. We don't know what, you like rap. How about accounting? You know what I'm saying? I was like, this is too boring. I can't do accounting. And I had a good economics professor. He was unbelievably nerd. Balbir Sehag, by the way. And, shout out to him at UMass Lowell. And I really saw the step up in the math level that was required to understand at a deeper level. And then, later went on UMass Lowell as well, did my master's in math. And from there, kind of put them all together and just instead of keeping them separate, I was like, look, man, they're coming together at a headway. So why not go full tilt with Professor Lyrical and do it on Front Street?
Professor Lyrical smash that glass ceiling. Wanna be keeping it professional. Never when anyone question how the lyricals out of my mouth come out and form all my credentials now. My potential now's a minimum. It's kinetical now. Incredible how I rhyme this well. We're spitting the mathematics out. Without a doubt, turning up the house lights. How can one professor have such incredible shelf life? Well preserved like peaches and herbs might fit in your jam. Well united once it's served right. Sit you down, son, like that's your third strike. Clean off your plate. Where's your manners? Get your words right. Yeah, you heard right. Pros, nouns, and verbs tight. That's why y'all can handle the boss. That's that dirt bike.
Hip hop and math seem like maybe an unlikely pair, and they both definitely get misunderstood in their ways. And I find it interesting that you kind of seem to debunk, demystify both at the same time for different audiences. You're known as a clean, conscientious rapper. I love the tracks and things that I've been listening to. Gravity, the remix with that one was amazing. I love it. But why do you think people have misunderstandings about math, or what math is fundamentally, or hip hop?
I think with math, you don't really, I think, first of all, when everybody's a young kid, we all like math, right? We all think it's cool. We're learning the facts and we're, adding, multiplying. Subtraction might mess you up. Fractions, right? That's usually where people start to jump off the bus a little bit, because it requires a little bit of work, right? It's not just like as obvious when you start layering the concepts on top of each other. We do adding and multiply pretty well naturally as humans, right? But then you make this go in reverse with the subtraction and division. It's like, wait a minute, what did we just do? And it no longer is as clearly intuitive when those concepts start to stack up as you move on through the math, right? But at the end of the day, the things you do with math are early on clear, like, hey, I need this to do basic arithmetic. And as you get into the weeds a little bit, it's like, well, what the hell? It's for, like, when am I going to use this? And you don't get a chance to see the really cool stuff unless you persist in it, right? A lot of times it can be pretty boring, let's face it, in a lot of like high school kind of math curriculums, unless you have faculty that are coming up with ways to make it culturally relevant. And that's kind of where the hip hop comes in. I think it has an easy way, instead of just using the stale examples that are in textbooks that have just been sitting there for years. It's like, why not reinvigorate them and put in things, people always talk about meet students where they're at. It's like, what does that look like? Right. And you can do it with pop culture and hip hop culture, movies, comic books, all the geekdom that, we dwell in, I think has a lot of concepts that are cool there, and that we can really break into them.
So that's how you sort of get those kids who weren't math people and engage in hip hop. Talk about how you use it in the classroom. I watched a YouTube video of yours. I guess it was 10 years ago when you came out to your students as the rapper, and you were trying to keep that really professorial line. When that line dropped, how did you find why did you decide to drop that and to blend these two?
Right. I never had a situation before. So that was my first year at Northeastern University. And I never had a situation before where I wasn't known already from the population of the students, right? So I'm from Lowell. I was teaching at Lowell High School. At Lowell High School, everybody knew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't a secret. I mean, that's part of probably the reason I got hired in the first place. At Northeastern, it kind of also was. I had performed at Northeastern. But, it's a university and you're getting kids from all over the place coming in. And I was teaching in a first year program. And the first year program, I think a lot of times when kids are new to college and they're coming in, they got a lot of other things to be worrying about them, like who's my professor and all this kind of stuff. You get a little bit older and savvier and you start finding out who they are, what time the classes are. But when you're coming in as a freshman, you're lucky to know what you have, at your second period of the day on a Tuesday, right? So I couldn't believe it that nobody knew. And so I was like, oh, and there were really like two people who did know. And I pulled one of them, her name was Deja. I pulled her aside and I'm like, look, you can't be telling anybody. Like, I'm going to this is great for me. Like, this is a whole new thing for me where I don't get on the first day, can you spit a 16 kind of thing. So we just went with it. We kept it as secret as we possibly could. And then when we had our little carnival spring break kind of thing, I just decided to say, hey, there's an artist coming, there's a rapper coming to campus, and everyone's like, who's it going to be? Is it Drake? and we're going to have a performance. And so we did it up big through the college, and we had the news there and the media there. It was really cool. It was a lot of fun for them to just be like mind blown, So that semester, I was not doing the normal stuff that we're talking about in the classroom to make it connect. I was trying to keep a line and be like, hey, class, today let's look at, multivariate calculus or whatever it was that we were teaching, and try to not do that, right? But still try to be engaging. So it was kind of fun for me because I was trying to use ways that other faculty might have to use if they're not rappers, you know what I'm saying, to make the
Right.
class fun. And a lot of it was pop culture, movies, Marvel, DC, those are hip hop tangential, right?
Right.
But they don't necessarily have to be. There's a lot of, hip hop has become mainstream culture, and it finds its way into the movies as well. And so, it was kind of easy to do actually, because that geekdom is the same kind of culture you want to create in the classroom, where it's okay to be a geek, where it's okay to be a nerd, it's okay to be smart, and it's a badge of honor among us. And we want to make it a badge of honor for those who traditionally maybe were like me when I was younger and think that they needed to hide it. Right? No, college, you can change your whole identity, man. You can be
Yeah.
whoever you want.
Yeah, from year to year, sometimes people come back from summer and it's like, yeah, I thought you were like, I came up in the 90s. It's like, I thought you were grunge. No, I'm hippie this year. And it's like,
Right.
we're all experimenting.
Oh
And-
yeah, you can go from gangster rap now to anime real quickly. You know what I mean? And like, there's a blur there, right?
Yeah.
You listen to the drill rap, and all of a sudden you're watching, Luffy or something. It's fine.
Talk a little bit about the rap career then, the hip hop, and because you always had that kind of going on the side,
Yeah.
and building a legit name for yourself, rubbing shoulders with some people who went on to become huge, named. What was it like? Did you try to keep the nerd out from that side as well? I'm trying to paint you as this evil supervillain with
Right,
but not.
No, it's I think early on, before I was Professor Lyrical and I was just lyrical, I had, a toe in the water with teaching high school, right? That didn't happen immediately. That happened later. And the thing is that I had started speaking in schools. We were doing shows. Shout out to my man Fee. He's doing crazy stuff as well too, a New England rapper. And shout out to Ruby, his girlfriend, and they rocked together. And we were all a group since high school, really. We were Excalibur. We shortened the name to Excal kind of casually. It was really just us three through college and whatnot. And the reason I bring all that up is like, I'm starting to get into the idea that every time we perform at a school, kids are going crazy. We have their ear. They're listening to us. Like, what's a little different about me already at that point is that I have my college degree now. I'm going through college, get the degree. And now we're talking to kids who are just a little bit younger than us, really, like high school kids and middle school kids. And they're finding that part of it cool. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you're like, well, wow, I wasn't really expecting that. And you find the people who are bringing you in as educators thought that's cool. And I could start to see like, okay, maybe this is something that you could market as well, as opposed to just kind of, oh, by the way, I get this college degree kind of thing, which was a little different from hip hop. But then I heard this dude come and speak at Harvard. So I moved to Cambridge, and partly because of taking trips to perform and do open mics in Cambridge. Shout out to the Lizard Lounge, which is a place I was able to go when I was underage. It was one of the first places I could go. They had spoken word poetry on Sundays and Jeff Robinson Trio, right? But you're in that environment now. And I always liken Harvard and Cambridge to like a Lowell on steroids. Lowell's a city on a river, a lot of diversity, a couple colleges, really a community college and a university, right? Compared to, MIT, Harvard, right? But the idea is just 20 miles down the street, you get this more poppin' kind of nightlife and environment mixing in, and they're bringing artists all the time to Harvard, right? And one of them was an old school artist by the name of Chub Rock. And he's in there, he's talking to people, telling them he got his master's degree. Now, this is before I did. And I'm like, damn, this is like a blueprint for me now. Like I'm hearing rapper has a master's degree. Like this is what I'm talking about, right? So I'm getting excited by that kind of stuff. So seeing that out there kind of made me a little bit more comfortable with it when I'd go into other spaces. I'd be like, yo, Chub Rock, he got a master's, you know what I'm saying? And now I'm looking for people who are doing similar things, right? I'm trying to find people who like have that maybe double life and like, how are they blending it? But most of the time it wasn't very intentional. It was like you'd find out if you happen to be at a conference where somebody's speaking and they're like, oh, by the way, I have this degree. And you start finding out a bunch of rappers have college degrees and so forth, but they're kind of keeping it in the closet. Like we don't want to let, kind of equivalent to don't want to let the nerd out because that's not seen as in vogue in hip hop culture necessarily. I think now that has switched quite a bit in terms of people who are comfortable at least speaking about it. I'm not saying that every rapper's like that, but people like J. Cole is a college educated person, and he's actually one of the more prominent people in the field. And he's just as legitimate as a lyricist. And that's what I've always tried to be. I've tried to be true to the craft, a master craftsman, lyricist kind of thing, freestyler, and still be, authentic in the classroom. So those, it's a challenge, but I like that. I think that's what separates me a little bit from the average person, maybe.
And there's probably a little bit of a parallel between the craft of freestyle and lyrics and, understanding how things fit together and mathematics, right? So you're building a toolbox. We started counting on our fingers, and then once we got a little bit more abstract, we had to denote patterns and things and how things work together. So you've competed in high stakes freestyle rap battles and defended a doctoral research. Which one was harder?
Freestyle battles. Yeah. So for me, like going through academic stuff, I had sort of imposter syndrome going through it. I would find myself sleeping in the library. I was just like not going to fail. Right. And so because the doctorate stuff's later in life and you've gone through the freestyle battles and rap battles, and, I would spend like weeks and weeks planning for a rap battle, like all I'd think about is that rap, but it's frontal lobe. It's like, I cannot be embarrassed on this stage. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst thing that can possibly happen. A dissertation defense or something like that is a few people, and you're in a small room and everybody's kind of a nerd and they all kind of know what you're talking about. Right. But now you might be in someone's home territory and you're up on stage, and, it can get really grimy real quickly if things go south. So
right.
Getting ready for rap battles to me is like, yeah, it's a shorter thing. It's not as long. The process is shorter, but it's nerve wracking at a different kind of level because you're on public display, and in the information era now on social media, it's like something goes wrong. A lot of people are going to see it real quickly. And to be fair, when I started my career battling, there wasn't like social media the way it is now, right? Like, I mean, you're lucky if someone has a camera or whatever, but then as time goes on, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this is being videotaped. Oh, wait a second, this is going to be on TV. Oh, wait, this might show up online. This could, so you start thinking about it and it put those added pressures. But for me, the imposter syndrome ensured that it wasn't as difficult because I over planned and over prepared, for everything that I needed to do. That's kind of been true to if you're going to do something at a craftsmanship level. I find the same thing you need in mathematics to be successful is the same thing you need to really write lyrics at a high level. You have to be willing to lock yourself in the basement and just not come up for air for 7 hours at a time before, it's midnight. You started at like lunchtime and you're like, where did the time go? And if you have that ability, I think you can do both because that's all they require. We trick ourselves into thinking like, oh, this math problem's just too hard. I can never get it. But, you stick at it for a while and come back to it, take a break, maybe for a little bit, maybe eat a sandwich or something. And then, but before you leave the house to go to the movies or something like that, like, do your due diligence, be like, look, I'm not leaving until I get this kind of thing. And that's kind of guided me through it,
Yeah. Fuel the brain, get some calories up in there.
Look, man, I got a little bar right here.
I talk a lot in some of my workshops about the caveman brain. And, about there's I don't know if this is true or if this has been debunked, but I did cite it in my book with that asterisk that there was an ESPN article several years ago that said that master chess players can burn upwards of 4,000, 5,000 calories during a tournament just sitting and thinking. And your brain consumes like 20%, upwards of, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but like a large portion of the calories for the size. And I always tell people, I'm like, the more you make your audience think, the more things you put in front of them that they have to hold and juggle, the less they're paying attention because we're cavemen and we're wired to conserve calories and to always have one eye over your shoulder, even if you're focusing on that frontal lobe stuff. So how do you, when you're getting into some of this higher level stuff with students, how do you chunk out concepts? Like, do you have any tips, advice, things that have worked for you, different ways of pivoting a concept to present, something that might be useful to the listeners who are maybe a technical practitioner, maybe not exactly in math, but they've got these complex things they're shoving at people And
Right.
they're like, here's the white paper. Now make a decision on it. And I was like, bro,
Well, there's two ways to answer that. I mean, actually, something you asked earlier comes back into play. You're mentioning the freestyle part, right? And when I was at Northeastern, I was able to teach. I was pretty much the only person teaching this for the Graduate School of Education. They had a need for mathematics methods courses being taught for future educators of math who were in the graduate program. And so they were like, hey, Plourde, you want to teach that? And I was like, I absolutely do. And so I got to teach that course. And basically, you're readying mathematicians to go out there. Those are my students now, right? People who like math and came to a very expensive school like Northeastern just so they could be a math teacher. You don't find too many people necessarily willing to do that if we're being truthful, that are going to go drop $80,000 a year on their education and they want to go be a math educator. Right? It's like
right.
not necessarily what they're doing. So
Get those people while they're hot.
Exactly. Needless to say, 5 to 7 people in my class like tops, right? So those classes are fun. And to the idea of the chunking, it's more like this. I'm trying to get those students to think about when they're going to be the educator in the classroom and how are you going to teach to the person who isn't like you, who doesn't necessarily like math. So of course you need to have the lesson plan written out properly. We talk about that, right? Having sort of entry points as you're chunking, like here's a point where you can switch the subject. Here's a point where you can bring in something dynamic. Here's a point where you can go to multimedia, right? Here's a point where you can get active crowd participation, much like a hip hop show, right? So the way I would do it is I would think about it as a performance, not being that necessarily we want to be the sage on the stage, but we are facilitating a class. And just like when you're emceeing a show, maybe as the master of ceremonies and not just the rapper, how would you think about this for the customer who's viewing the show, right? The patron, what's the experience going to land like? And so to the educators, I would say, look, the freestyling that I do as a performer is relevant in the classroom because you need to be able to come off the script when it isn't working, or when somebody's very real natural curiosity is piqued and you need to address that. The worst thing to do is to not address that and go back to your script, right? Because it's calling for that live moment of human interaction. And in the AI era, and I was even talking about this, while I haven't been in Northeast for full-time for 7 years. I'm still there, actually employed as adjunct faculty. And I still work with my old team quite a bit. And I'm actually speaking one of these classes coming up relatively soon. But when I was there full-time, we were talking about the advent of AI and how we could be replaced. In fact, in one of my first TEDx talks I did, I think it was 2014-ish, probably. I'll have to double check that date. The TEDx Pissaquatta River up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I mentioned we as calculus instructors could easily get replaced if we're not able to do something different than what AI is going to very easily be able to do and can probably do it better when it becomes efficient enough. So like, what are you going to do? And one of the very main things that you can do is address your audience and have that human interaction piece to really understand where they're at. And that's just it. I mean, that's the secret of it. It's really trying to find out who are the people in front of you. And a lot of times when you're performing on a stage, you're just performing a preset script, and that can be boring too. Are you interacting? Are you finding out who's there? We all watch a comedian interact and riff off of when somebody's a heckler, and it's usually the best part of the show, right? So just being comfortable with it comes from the preparation, your due diligence that you've done before, but knowing, hey, these are my points where I can freestyle and riff a little bit. And heaven forbid, if I need to totally go off the script, like, am I willing to do it? Am I comfortable with that and not feel like the day was a failure?
But there's so much preparation to it. But at the same time, the improv or the being ready to switch or jump on a concept that someone throws out at you, you're really doing yes and with the audience. And I imagine you get that with the students too. Like, what have you learned from students? Like, because our brains, we often see things one way. And we think that it's our job as educators or technical communicators to impose our knowledge, but it's our perspective on students.
Yes.
And then they come at you from a completely different direction. And it's like wild. And like that being open to learning yourself when you're the professor, you're the one who's up there talking, I think is key. Coming down to the level, not down to the level, but coming to the level of the students using the pop culture, using the hip hop, I would imagine, is a way of getting that connection, that human, so that it's, computer calculus, it's like conversational calculus.
Yes, and I like that. So let me answer that way. Yes, and I also would use, and I think I got this from teaching the math methods courses too, using the faculty, right? See, in my position now, I'm not only an associate professor of math, I direct faculty development, right? So I'm stealing the best ideas from other educators now and taking all the credit, right? So I kiddingly tell them that. I say, hey, man, if you like what I'm doing, that's thank yourselves because it's the amalgamation of everything you guys are doing. And it's true. It's the same thing with the students. It's you're taking their objections, you're taking their criticisms and all the aha moments that work, and you're just remembering them the same as you would if you're performing on a stage. What was the best part of your set? Right? It's probably going to translate multiple times. What's the best part that I did here? Let me pat myself on the back. Okay. But really, what
Mhm.
landed well with students and what didn't, and be okay with taking both of them. I do the same thing with faculty, and now I do a thing called MSFs, which it's not something I invented, but just following other good advice that other educators do in mid-semester feedback sessions. And instead of waiting to the end, right, when we get our evaluations back, have a neutral person come in, maybe a colleague, and come in and just do a little survey with your class and be like, hey, what things am I mucking up? What
Mhm.
things do you want more of? And give me back the report. I just leave the room anonymously. And I do these for other faculties. We create that culture, right, where it's okay to tell me I'm not killing it. Right? And you know what you're doing, Dr. Plourde? You're really messing up when you do here. Like, why are you making homework due Sunday midnight when we're not going to get any sleep? Is that what you really want? So you take these little pieces of criticism as you go, but it's not just from the students, it's actually from the faculty as well, too. So I got to give credit to them as well.
Yeah, you've got to have that vulnerability, and it might sting a little bit, but it's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger a little bit. All right, this is Joel just busting in here for a quick second. What an amazing conversation with Professor Lyrical. I'm truly enjoying this, and his transformation has been just amazing. The way he blends academics and arts, and if you want to learn how to do a little bit of this, I got a book coming out, and you can check it out. You can actually sign up right now to be part of the book army. Get an early copy of it. Just go to nerd.talksgood.com/book. Sign up, drop me a message, let me know you want it. All I ask of you is an amazing review when it comes out in a couple months. You can also go there, support the show, learn how to be a nerd that talks good. That's what we're all about. I got really exciting stuff coming up the next couple guests. So keep tuned, and let's get back to this awesome conversation with Pro. So you've been in academia and math for so long. If you could rewrite math education in the U.S., what do you think the first thing is you would change at any level, at primary, college, wherever? Would you start your jumping off points?
My knee-jerk reaction is textbooks. And I think we're in the OER world now, the, open resources, where open education is kind of a movement now, and we're kind of there. But for years, I would cringe at textbook examples, kind of like what I was speaking to earlier, because it's such like central part of the country, America examples,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, a farmer is baling wheat. It's like, what are we talking about? Like, farming's cool, but not everybody is, in the heartland, or, Biff is shining, his shoes on the, it's like, all right, we can do better.
Right.
We can do better. So building in the engagement with the actual examples that you're going to do is only second to actual experiential education in the first place, right? So having more experiential situations for students, I think that's what we naturally want. It's why math's fun when you're little, right? Because you're throwing dice on the floor or marbles on the floor, and you're making connections and associations to things that matter to you. And we lose that when we become adults, and we're like, well, you guys are all mature now. You can just sit there in the chair forever and read the boring textbook. And it's like, no, but it's not what we need to do. So we're in a cut and paste era as well with textbooks. And even with, it's big business now with all of the computer assisted technology that we have out there that I also hope will go away, to be frank with you. Pearson is a multi-billion-dollar company. I've used Pearson products for a long time. Cengage products still do, but they're cut and paste. Like, here's the example. Now you do it. Right?
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of ingenuity going on there for our students. They're really just learning how to, cut and paste, plug and chug. And it's not really what we talk about for critical thinking. And I think math gets too much credit for being the engine of critical thinking. And it might as well be any other subject. If that's all we're going to do in the classroom is just do cut and paste, kind of plug and chug, that's not critical thinking. I would rather do a lesson that is visual, that is audio based, that gets as many of the senses in as possible and brings in people from the margin who haven't traditionally had much success in mathematics, especially at a higher level, and say to them, look, this is your environment too. We're building this for you, and show them and demonstrate that. And a lot of times that looks like game theory. That's what I start with, is game theory in the classroom, playing games where your natural creativity and curiosity comes into play. And then later you backfill with the mathematics that you did. Now let's write what we actually did, and now let's formalize it. And it's empowering because you're seeing that it's rooted in something fun and curious, and that now we can formalize it and be precise and use the rigor the mathematics demands at the higher levels so that it doesn't seem like a foreign language and that it makes more sense intuitively.
Yeah, the cheese sauce before the broccoli. You're like, aha, surprise! You learned something.
Yes. The more we can get students just making their own lessons and making their own videos now, I just think is a win, right? So just bring in the technology, let them engage, and they do better. Just like our younger, I have an 11-year-old son. You just let them do what they're going to do, and it's usually pretty darn good when you don't give them too much instruction.
Right.
Give the instruction later if needed, you know?
Yeah, let the concepts and things stay in the textbook, and don't try to story tell from the textbook, but you
Right.
extract those concepts and then let them bring the culture, let them bring the examples.
Yep.
And then pull the cover back and this was the concept all along. It's kind of
Right.
that. And it's a total win when people are like, I'm interested in that because I have that problem that I have to solve. It's not of an equation you've put in front of me, I could care less. If it's a tool that I'm going to be able to use, then I'm going to learn it because, gosh darn it, I've got stuff in my life that relies on it. And I find that's the place that so many people who have a tool start, is with the tool. Let me show you this and then tell you why it's important. I like to flip that and say, you've got this problem in your life, or you've got this thing you want to solve, and let's look at how we can do it together. Oh, look what I just happen to have. I want to kind of go back to this concept when we were talking about the rap battle versus working with peers and colleagues and things. And I had this picture in my head of broadening circles of audiences, right? When you're in a room with friendlies, people who typically know, right? The pressure, you were saying, is not quite as on, the emotions and the stakes aren't quite as high. And, you would get on a stage, maybe with people who have varying levels of, I'll just call it technical knowledge, being sort of read into the concept. And then you open this prospect to video and it being shared more widely. And how do you handle situations when you have an audience, or you may have an audience that has a varying level of that technical knowledge? You can't always gauge it ahead of time. They're not students. You're not like, I know we're here, or I want to get us here. The students are here. So you get up on a TEDx stage and, you've got a very limited amount of time to deliver remarks, but you don't know where everybody is, for example. How do you handle that situation?
I think getting people engaged from the outset is key, right? So at a TEDx, like opening with a rap would probably be a way to grab everybody's attention, and then at least have a short window by which they're going to listen to the next thing you say. I think it's a little different in classroom spaces. I think a lot of times that you can actually turn to the students quickly to let them do some of what I would have called maybe the grunt work, which would be let them talk about the things that they know that are the pillars of the subject that are there, and let other people hear them. And normally what happens is, your extroverts want to do that and your introverts don't, right? And so how we think about managing spaces that, like, I'm an introvert naturally, but I'm a creative extrovert. And so as a creative extrovert, I really come alive when there's something creative that's being asked. And if it's something mundane, I don't. But for the mundane stuff, you can usually get the extroverts to be willing just to speak about it. Right.
Yeah.
So I will sometimes, I'm thinking that in mind, and I don't want it to be extrovert dominated because I want to bring in those introverts, but that's the way that I'm strategically thinking about it. Like, what lesson am I going to do that needs participation now? Let me find out where my extroverts are, and then let me find one that's going to need everybody. And how can I make that really creative so that I know introverts like me, and a lot of us geeks in general, right? We're going to sit in the back of the room a lot of time, but if you make it engaging to what we want to do, we come right alive. So it's thinking, you got to know who the players are in the particular room. And it's a little bit easier when you talk about the friendlies and so forth, about finding out who's in your class early and getting the buy-in. Let them do the grunt work in terms of like, if I said, what is the big idea? Like I do a lot with quantum mechanics, right? And so if I was to ask you, like, what are the big, I don't mean you personally, but if I was to ask my class, what are the big ideas in quantum mechanics, as opposed to me telling you what the big ideas in quantum mechanics are, let some of the extroverts who've seen it in pop culture talk about it. I might start the lesson that way. What have we heard in pop culture about quantum mechanics that and it can be wrong. That's fine.
Hmm.
Like, what's something you've heard about out there in quantum mechanics, right? And now that's going to get those introverts as well. After the extroverts take the first couple of whacks at it, they're going to come in and probably talk about when they saw a Marvel movie, right? Or they saw, Ant-Man was in the quantum realm, right? Like that's going to come out, and letting those places thrive, because that's great. So that builds engagement. We can talk about what's wrong and what's right, So I think it's critical that you have those fun things first, whether it's the rap verse or it's talking about, Marvel comics and DC and those kind of things, and the Arrowverse and the multiverse, and, all that stuff is wonderful. So
Yeah, and that's the opportunity you get to yes and them. You're like, yes, that's the way it is in pop culture,
yes,
and this is the part of it that they're drawing on that might be right.
right. A lot of
I'm
wrong there, but
a lot of wrong there, exactly. And say
a lot of wrong.
and the wrong is fun. And I love Ant-Man. Is one of my I love Paul Rudd in anything. He's just hilarious. Who are some of
Saying
the
there might be some physical stressors on our body if we suddenly grow to 50 feet instantaneously.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Now we go over to the biology class and we talk about why whales have to be underwater because their body weight. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that too.
Yeah.
Who are some of the other communicators that you admire, either in math or, rappers, hip hop artists that you look to, that you admire now, who are doing some pretty amazing things?
Great question. There's ones across spectrums for sure. When I think of people that do something similar to me, Dr. Chris Emdin. Dr. Chris Emdin has used hip hop and STEM together. He's at Columbia University. He went out to USC for a while, and he was an endowed chair out there for a while. And his dad passed away, and he went back to New York City, where he's from. And he's got bars, and he runs these amazing science programs. He brings in Wu-Tang to his class. I mean, he's a celebrity, right? I've performed with him at Columbia and done some stuff with him. So I look at him as almost like a big brother mentor. When I was doing research, trying to find other people doing something like this, his name just kept popping up. And so we eventually met. He's just a fantastic communicator. I love him. Some of the popular people too that are out there in pop culture, everybody points to the Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world. I think he does an excellent job, and he gets stuff wrong as well. Like we were just talking about, he'll say something. I'll be like, ooh, I wish he didn't say that, because I pay a lot of attention to circles that are a little bit more marginalized. And when I think of marginalized communities, I think of our flat earther friends.
Mhm.
It is a growing community. And he will once in a while say something that I know they're going to jump on and nitpick because he didn't say it technically correct. And he'll talk about, oh, we weren't really out in space that far. And I'm like, ooh, you might not want to say that. Everybody does a good job when you're trying to popularize the subject, but with that, making things popular, it's usually a lot less rigorous. And so our little science STEM hats go off. I'm like, oh, that's not exactly right. I do it too. But it's usually the people that are at least willing to walk up to what isn't correct, right where that line is, to build the engagement where you're going to maybe have an issue or two that's not there. But there's so many. I mean, there's so many disciplines that I just watch somebody speaking and I'm like, wow, they're great. Just different styles too. There's people in quantum science that I will listen to speak, and they're very measured. And I don't know if you know who Sabine is, but Sabine Hassenfelder does a whole series. She's for years has been doing a series on quantum mechanics and physics and so forth. And she's usually very, I don't want to say conservative, but measured about in terms of like, yeah, that's not right. Let's
Mhm.
stop with the gobbledygook here and stop with the magic. Like this, that's not what quantum is, right? But now, because she's become more of a figure on YouTube, much like Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Neil deGrasse is an esteemed physicist, but now let's face it, his bread is buttered from what he's doing in the space of being a communicator. Sometimes they have to say something for a little extra shock value, and I get it. But those people, they walk the line, and I appreciate what they're able to do. So great question, though. There's so many, but I would point to people to see them as well. And shout out to my man, Justin, Mr. Fascinate. He's a guy who works with science and building multimedia, and he's done some work with NASA, and he's in those spaces too.
I'm compiling my list of guests for next season. So yeah, I will
Yeah.
start reaching out. And Neil deGrasse Tyson's on my wish list. I'd love to get him on. People like Hank Green. What I appreciate about a lot of the creators and the communicators is when they show that they are wrong, or when they show that I'm curious and I don't know.
It's a regular part of my day.
And, I think when you get up to a certain level of point, people don't want to do that. They feel like they've got this authority. They feel like they have to be, they have to have this veneer of, everything I say is super accurate. And to deGrasse Tyson's credit, he often says, we just don't know. Like, I think, and, in technical communications, we often make statements. Now, in math, I would believe it's a little bit more, ones and zeros, black and white. But where are the squishy areas? Are there things in math that we don't know yet? I mean,
yeah.
Where do we go from here? We know so much.
Well, you can win a Fields Medal with all of the unsolved math problems and proofs that are out there that we just kind of think are right, but we don't really know. That's not really what keeps me up at night, to be honest. I'm not really trying to, go win any Fields Medals or anything like that. It's the equivalent of the Nobel Prize for mathematics, right? It's not really exciting time for me because it feels too disengaged. It's too much in the basement and just by your lonesome, right? Like, I'm trying to overcome. My life has been overcoming being that person who's comfortable in the basement to be more of an extrovert in general, right? Because it is needed, because we have so few people raising the banner for STEM and, even the geekdom, right? It's like, who are our geek heroes? That's almost an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
When you're thinking about, public front facing, like, Joel, maybe you're going to be the flag bearer, right? So when you think about it, the whole essence of your show is finding people who communicate, right, in a space where we don't historically, let's face it, have some of the best communicators. So it's tricky when you're trying to point to examples, because that's exactly what we need more of. But in math, just sitting in the basement all day is not going to get me to that place necessarily. So I'm always looking for things that are a little bit more interactive, that are going to point a flashlight, or I should say a spotlight, onto STEM science in general, as opposed to, just being some random person working on another unsolved problem with my lonesome or a couple people from school.
That's awesome. I'm real excited about the stuff that you're doing. I mean, again, not a math guy at all. My son, 15, gifted in math, but could care less about it. And, so, and sort of the point of earlier is giving them something to point a spotlight on that says, hey, this is useful. Like, next year, we're probably going to do economics. And because he wants to know where the money comes from. He wants to know about money. I'm like, bro, there's psychology involved in that. There's so much interweaving that, I think coming up out of the basement and seeing where math rubs up against the gritty, sweaty human aspects of the world is amazing. I want to kind of close with just what keeps you fresh? What keeps you grounded? Is it a day-night light switch thing, between, all right, with the college professor is off and the Professor Lyrical is on? I mean, they're both part of your personality. Is there like a third? Is there like a third identity we might do? Do you garden?
Dad is definitely my son is definitely, I'm actually in his room while I'm talking to you right now while he's at school. No, my life is really embedded in my son's life. And so, and I find that thinking about him usually does center me in terms of you want your kids to be proud of you, right? So it's like, what would, I'll ask him sometimes, I'll say, hey, would you be mad if I go do this show? He said, go do it. Like, Daddy, I want you to be a bigger rapper. In half of my earlier life when he was younger, and now he's 11, I said earlier, when he was like 5, it was a real question for me. Am I going to go to this random show location for some reasonable amount of money, maybe, but I'm going to be gone maybe 2 or 3 days? Is that something I really want to do and leave my wife? Like all those kind of decisions come into play. So that one I can't understate. But the rest of it is kind of a synthesis. It really is. And I do want to give a shout out to my university. I'm at the University of District of Columbia.
Yep.
And the shout out that I want to give is that I was one of the lead faculties for a program that we have in quantum literacy. And I think this is so needed. And this is like a shout out to people to maybe do something similar. So I'm with an organization called QSTEAM, which is a national outfit for quantum information science. And we're trying to make quantum a minor that you can adapt at any college. I mean, we've actually finished. We've written 4 courses and we've embedded the A of arts into there. So you see certainly where I fit in. among my peers that all realized we need to do more to engage people in these big ideas. And what we did at UDC, we started an associates program. It's the, you know, even just like maybe blue collar STEM, the call from the people in the area, especially at the National Quantum Congress, that the World Congress that happens out here every year for quantum, they're like, look, we just need people that are quantum competent. We don't necessarily need people at the PhD level. We have those, they're out there. We need people who can come in at the ground floor, maybe mid-career, who understand quantum. Like, what are the big ideas? Could you guys make a program? We jumped all over that. We were already starting to do that anyways. And we went full tilt, and we did it at the lowest level that we could in terms of, you know, how high you need to be in terms of the academic ladder. We did it at the associates level. And, you know, over half of our student population, or roughly half of our student population in our institution, comes through the associate pathway because we are the only public option in Washington, D.C. So what we dub as our community college is also inside of the university. And that's where like half the students come through. So like a lot of them are going to enter right into the workforce. We hope they continue on and get their bachelor's and master's and doctorates at our institution, but they don't always do that. Some of them are ready to enter the workforce, and we're answering the workforce to say, look, we'll take an associate's. And so we did that, and hopefully they were going to get there, but we did it with the A, you know, with the arts, by trying to get people engaged through all of these same things that we're talking about. That stuff is what, to answer your question, it's the blending of that, right? It's like, what can I do today that is academic and artistic? Those things are the things that I love to do, because I don't have to do one or the other. I can spit bars that are dope, that are also intelligent, right? Like that keeps me up at night. If I hear something that's motivating in that kind of light, I'm like, oh, that's dope. If I watch Star Wars and it inspires me, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write this Star Wars verse, but I'm not going to make it cheesy and corny and just make the end word happen to rhyme with, you know, favor, so I can rhyme lightsaber, even though I might rhyme lightsaber. Right? It's going to be deeper. It's going to be doper. It's going to be complex, you know. Let the force be bygone and some Master Qui-Gon. Force never dies. We just multiply on. Melt that iron with fire of its Kion. Light sharpens light. Sabers we pipe on. Right on through the dead of night to dawn. Dedicated like a Mennonite when I recite psalms. With a couple lightsabers I place in my tight palms. Devils bounce like Luffy. I'm chewing fruits of the gods, baby. Maybe all my poems I'm cold made open law. Broken model. Ahsoka Tano. The Padawans. They travel on, and sometimes they act sinister. Her third sisters want to be grand inquisitors. There's good in them. I search like prime minister. Pete, I'm nice on beats and mics. I might finish them. Obi-Wan, Anakin, my son. Obi-Wan, now we back at one. Brian Midnight them. Teach them the ways of the force. Gravitation to pull them back if they stray off course. Of course, I am one with the forceps. Surgical, you know what I mean? Like, it's just bringing it all together, right? And then, like, that's for me is fun. That keeps me up at night. I'm having fun with it. It's deeper. It's like, that stuff.
That's awesome. I'm glad I got you to do that on the recording.
I don't know what happened there.
It was so good. I will drop in some links, obviously, to UDC and your page, and you got an album coming up.
That verse is on it. That verse is on a song called Bad and Good. And yeah, the album's called Dr. Plourde. Thanks for mentioning it. Comes well, it'll probably be out by the time you guys are seeing this. So search for Dr. Plourde, that's the real name, Professor Lyrical, and got it on vinyl too. So you can get it on vinyl on Professor Lyrical.
I got my turntable back here.
Man, I'm gonna have to send you one, man. I just got the test pressing myself, and it looks as good as it sounds. So,
exciting. Well, thank you so much for joining. This has been great. I'm gonna drop a whole bunch of links. I'm gonna chase down all the shout outs that you gave, because what I love to do is give homework. So anybody who's listening,
me too.
Go to I think my homework might be a little bit more fun. I don't know.
I think I rate my teacher, and that's probably the criticism of me. So like, gives a lot of homework, but
but some of your homework is go listen to this and get them engaged. This has been amazing. So much fun. We're local. I'm in DC. I will give you a shout when I get back down around that way.
You have to come by the lab.
I would. That would be amazing. But thank you so much for joining again. We need more teachers. We need more people like you out there. I hope you've inspired some people.
Oh, that was the last plug. Go be a professor, because you know what? This is the thing that they don't tell you that I always want to say. And sometimes the university, if I say it the wrong way, they might not like it, but I'm going to say it anyways. When I was teaching high school, I didn't have any free time. If you're teaching K through 12, you're a saint. You deserve double, triple your pay, right? Like it is, you don't have time to breathe, right? It's unbelievable. So we got to big up what those folks are doing, right? But at higher ed, it's the inverse relationship. We typically get paid more money and have way more free time. It's like not only the 9 months, not only all the holidays, but like we might teach 2 classes, right? And that's a full-time load for a lot of us, some 3 classes, whatever, right? 4 for the absolute worst. And compare that to anybody teaching K through 12, they'd kill for that. And so I
Yeah.
find that to be a little backwards, but in any event, to my fellow artists out there, if you're trying to think of a pathway that will allow you some extra time to, you got to write your articles and do your homework and so forth, but there's certainly some free time in there for some creative thoughts. You can definitely find the time with the load that's maybe higher ed schedule. So big shout out to higher ed.
That's awesome. Yeah. Big shout out to higher ed. Again, thanks for joining. This has been awesome. And maybe I'll get out to a show sometime.
Absolutely. I'll have to let you know. I appreciate it, Joel.
Sweet. Thanks. If you want links to the resources mentioned on the show, head on over to the episode page. And for information on booking a message therapy workshop, getting your hands on the message deck, to check out my upcoming book, or just buy me a coffee, go to nerdthattalksgood.com/podcast. Until next time, happy messaging. Remember, you don't have to speak well. You only got to learn how to talk good.